Hello viewers, welcome to this channel. Today, my name is Sunday. We'll likely look at some Jamb past questions on government, even as we prepare for 2036. Please sit down and flow along with me. Looking at this first one, which of the following is a fundamental principle of a democratic government? When we talk about democratic governance, that's talking about democracy, centralized decision-making, censorship of the media, citizenship participation, authoritarianism. If you look at A, B, and C, they are not relevant to democracy. So, for you to get a democratic government, it's government of the people, by the people, and for the people. The people have to be part of the process of making that government. So the correct answer for number 1 is C, citizenship participation. The next question, which of the following is not a source of public opinion? Public opinion is aggregate opinion of majority of the people expressed. So which of these is not? Opinion polls, in other words, all the options are correct except one. Opinion polls, academic journals, social media, political parties. Academic journal is restricted to academic purposes. So it may not encompass all about public opinion. Okay? So the only one that is not part of public opinion here is academic journal. The other three are sources of public opinion. Let's see the next question. In a parliamentary system of government, the head of government is. In a parliamentary system of government, you can still recollect, you note that we have two leaders, the head of state and of course the head of government. The head of state is ceremonial president, the head of government is the prime minister. So the head of government is typically who? The prime minister. And who is the prime minister? The prime minister is one of the members of the majority party in the house. In fact, he's the leader of the majority party in the house. So let's see. A, elected directly by the people. B, the leader of the majority party in the legislature. C, appointed by judiciary. D, chosen by the head of state. From what I just explained to you, the correct answer here is B, the leader of the majority party in the legislative house. Let's see the next one. The policy of indigenization was introduced under the regime of, I hope you understand the meaning of indigenization, a policy that was introduced before the 70s, around towards the end of 60s, to encourage Nigerians to own industries, as well as also participate in foreign industries that operate in Nigeria. So we introduced it under which, it was military government we had then. So under which military government? Yakubu Gowon, Olusegun Obasanjo, Ibrahim Babangida, Sani Abacha. The correct answer is A, Yakubu Gowon. Gowon was head of state of Nigeria after the first coup. Okay? And was the one that led Nigeria into civil war and also after war. Very well. Let's see the next question here. Who is the current chairperson of ECOWAS? ECOWAS is a regional organization, economic community of West African states, and the head of the chairman or chairperson is rotational on annual basis, right? When our president came to power 2 years ago, last year they had a meeting, I think in Guinea-Bissau, where he was elected as the chairperson. So the correct answer here is Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Nigerian current president. As we go to the next one. The constitutional amendment process in Nigeria requires the approval of, in other words, for you to amend, to change any portion of the Nigerian Constitution. Remember, the Nigerian Constitution is written, and because it's written, it's also what? Rigid. Written means it's codified in one document, and rigid means it's difficult to amend. It's not that it cannot be amended, but it's difficult to be amended. So for you to amend any portion of the Nigerian Constitution, there must be a 2/3 majority, both of the House and also 2/3 majority of the 36 states House of Assembly. So let's look at options and see the one that's closer to that simple explanation I just gave. A, the Independent National Electoral Commission, the National Assembly, the President, the Supreme Court. Of course, laws are made and laws are amended by the legislature, who are known as National Assembly in Nigeria. So the correct answer here is the National Assembly. Okay? Now, looking at the next question still on the screen, I think you can see it very well. During the Cold War, Nigerian foreign policy was characterized by, I don't know if you have heard story about the Cold War. The Cold War was a period of disagreement between the Warsaw Pact and the NATO Pact within the United Nations Organization. The Warsaw Pact were the socialist country led by USSR then before disintegration in 1981, and the NATO Pact were led by USA. They are the capitalist states. Very well. So there's always disagreement on policy making, policy decision making in the United Nations. And this led to what they call Cold War. Okay? And some of the elements of that Cold War is still ongoing up to date. So at that point, some third world nations like Nigeria, India, and Ghana decided that, and Yugoslavia and the rest of them, that we need both sides. We need the socialist country for help when we need ammunition or water support. Then we also need the capitalist world when we need them for other, maybe money or whatever support we need from them. So to be a balancer and to be on the safe side, we have to be neutral. In this disagreement, Cold War, we must be neutral. So in an attempt to be neutral, an organization was formed called NAM, Non-Alignment Movement. Okay? So let's see what the answer now from my brief explanation to this. During the Cold War, Nigerian foreign policy was characterized by A, alignment with other states, that is the capitalist states, neutrality and non-alignment, C, pursuit of colonial interests, and D, alignment with Soviet Union. Like I said in my explanation, non-aligned with Soviet Union, the Warsaw, the socialists, non-aligned with the United States, the capitalists, and the NATO. So we were neutral at that point. That's non-alignment. The correct answer to the question is D, option B, neutrality. Option B, neutrality and non-alignment. I hope you're enjoying this session. Please subscribe to the channel so that I can get more of this. Okay? Now, which of the following document granted Nigeria its independence? The last Lancaster House Agreement, the Atlantic Charter, the Nigerian Independence Act, United Nations Declaration of Decolonization. Nigeria got independent as a result of the two conferences that took place in 1957 and 1958 at London. And it was at these conferences that it was agreed that by October 1st, Nigeria would be granted independence by 1960. And by that 1960, a constitution was promulgated. And that constitution is an act that gave us independence. So correct answer there is option C, the Nigeria Independent Act. The word act also means Nigeria Independent Constitution or Nigeria Independent Law. C. Okay? Now, look at the next question here before us. Which of the following is a right associated with citizenship? The right associated with citizenship. Okay? Education, vote, privacy, property. Some of these are privileges. This education is a privilege, privacy is a privilege, can also be taken away from you if there's any criminal offense and what have you. So the most correct one is vote, that is franchise. As a citizen of a country, you have the right to vote and be voted for. I will call it franchise. Another name for that is called suffrage. So the correct answer to this question is B, right to vote. Okay? In a parliamentary system of government, the executive branch is, I did a little explanation on parliamentary system of government when I was answering this question. I did question 1 or question 2. If you can just review it, you'll see it there. Okay? Now, so the executive branch is what? Under the control of judiciary, combined with legislative branch, elected through popular votes, separate from legislative branch. In a parliamentary system of government, we experience what they call fusion of power instead of separation of power. In presidential system of government, we had separation of power. But in a parliamentary system, we have fusion of power and alternate. And what is fusion of power? It means when members of the legislature are also members of the executive. In fact, the prime minister, who is the head of the executive, is a member of the legislature. And most of his co-ministers, they were all members of the legislature. So there's a fusion of two organs. And these two organs are the legislative organ and the executive organ. So the correct answer here is that the executive branch is combined with legislative branch. Option B. Option B. Okay, option B. Now, let's see the next question. What is the main source of funding for public corporations in Nigeria? Public corporations are created by act of parliament. They are created by law. And that is why we say they are legal entity. They can sue and be sued. So therefore, how did they get their funding, their source of money to run the business? A, government budget allocations. B, foreign aid. C, revenue generated from their operations. D, donation from private companies. Since it's government owned and possibly government controlled, then it is from budget allocation of the government. They are allocated to them their source of fund. And when they start off the business, they could also make business. And along the line, they grow and recapitalize their base. Okay? Let's see the next one. Which of the following is a limitation of pressure group? Remember, pressure groups are interest group. Okay? When I say which of the following, which means all of them are not correct. Only one is correct. The pressure group is an interest group, and they are solely concerned about the interests of their members. And basically, what they do is to influence government policies as it affects their members. Okay, so let's see. They only represent the interests of the wealthy now. They have no influence on the government policies. How can you say that? Because that's their main objective, to influence government policy. C, they may prioritize their own interests over the public interest, of course. D, they often resort to violent tactics. Please take note. We are looking at the limitation of pressure group. The one limitation could also mean the challenge or the problem of a pressure group or disadvantage of pressure group. And the answer here is C. They may prioritize their own interests over the public interest. And that is why people call them interest group. I don't want to use the word selfish group in quotes, but they are interest group. So most of the time, their interest, the interest of their members, particularly of their group, is over the interest of the public. So the answer here is option C. Okay? Let's see the next question now. Which of the following is a function of the PCC? The word PCC is Public Complaint Commission. Another name for it in Nigeria is Ombudsman. I think this Ombudsman came from Sweden, thereabout. It means Public Complaint Commission. So what is their basic responsibility? What is their function? Managing public transportation, enforcing criminal laws, conducting investigations and inquiries, implementing foreign policies. Okay, so Public Complaint Commission, what they do is to hear complaints from members of the public, particularly about government officials, thereby to investigate and find a redress, find a way of finding solution to such issue. So the correct answer here is option C, conducting investigations and inquiries. Okay? The next one here, what is the term for a system of government in which power is held by a small group of people? In our previous videos, I explained the word Olai or Oli. Okay, we have Oli, we have Mono, we have Oligo, we have Dua, we have Duo. Dua, Duo. When we say Dua or Duo, we are talking about two. When you talk about Oli, Oligo, Oli, Oligo, we are talking about few. Okay, few. And when you say Mono, we are talking about what? One. Okay, or unit, one, together. So, in this case, we are talking about a small group. A small group can said to be few. All right? So, we have oligarchy, Oli is there. Monarchy, theocracy, democracy. You know that A and D are opposite, they're alternate. Democracy is when we have majority of the people ruling, majority ruling. Why this question is talking about small group, which is few, right? Monarchy is talking about ruling by a king or a queen or an emperor, okay? Theocracy is an example of oligarchy. So the correct answer to this option, to this question is A, oligarchy. Oligarchy. Few people ruling, oligarchy. I hope you enjoy this session. Please subscribe to the channel for more. All right? Which African country successfully resisted European imperialism and maintained its independence? If you have read about the history of Africa, you notice that the only country that stood her ground against colonial infiltration was Ethiopia. Ethiopia was said to be the one that stopped them when it came to Addis Ababa, the capital city. Okay? Kenya, well, Ghana was already under, with Nigeria under British. So the correct answer here is what? Is Ethiopia. Ethiopia. It's said to be the only country that's not colonized, because when the colonial master came, they resisted them and they went back. Okay? Okay. 16. Which of the following is a feature of Nigerian federalism? In our previous video, I discussed federalism and explained it in details. Federalism is where the sharing of power or division of power between the central government and the component units. The component units here can be regions, and they can be states, and of course local governments. All right? So when powers are being divided or shared, it may not necessarily be equal anyway, but power are being shared. We'll call it federalism. So A, single party system. B, centralized fiscal system. C, autonomy of local government. D, strong central government. A single party system is good for a unitary system of government. A centralized fiscal policy is also good for a unitary system. In a unitary system, all powers are concentrated at the center. Why do we have autonomy? The word autonomy here means independent or sovereignty of the local government. Okay? Under federal system, each of the levels of government, we have 3 levels. For instance, in Nigeria, we have federal, we have state, we have local government. Each of these levels are independent, right? We have a chief executive at the center called the president, executive president. We have a chief executive at the state called what? Executive governor. And we equally have a chief executive at the local government called what? Executive chairman. Okay? So the autonomy of the local government is a major feature, is the correct answer for this particular question. Because A, B, and D are features of a unitary system of government. All right? Looking at this lesson, if the president refuses to sign a bill within a specific period, it can still become law through, well, you remember there are processes of passing a bill into law. Okay? We have the first stage, we have the second stage, we have the committee stage, we have the report stage, the third stage, and of course the assent. So this question is concentrating on the last one. In other words, after all the processes must have been concluded at the legislative house, they will send it to the head of state or the president for approval, for sign. So when this bill gets to the president has 2 reactions to the bill. One, the president could assent the bill, and the president could veto the bill. The word assenting the bill means approve the bill, sign it to law. Okay? While veto means disapproval to the bill. So if you sign it to law, well, everything has done well. But if you veto the bill by disapproving to sign the bill to law, the bill will go back to the House. And when it gets back to the House will demand the president to seek advice of his advisors and his ministers, and to even give them reasons why it's not signing the bill. And when they wait for a particular, maybe 90 days thereabout, and there's no response for a genuine response from the president, the head of the legislative house, which is the Senate president, as the case in Nigeria, will call for a joint sitting of the House. Remember, we have 2 houses in Nigeria. We have the lower house, House of Representatives. We have the upper house, House of Senate. They meet separately. The House of Rep meet with their speaker. The House of Senate meets with their Senate president. Okay? But when a case like this arises, they will call, the Senate president will call for a joint sitting of the 2 houses. And at that joint sitting, they will go for a voting that the president has rejected, has refused to sign the bill they passed in the House, in the 2 houses. What should we do? So they will vote on that bill. And by doing that vote, 2/3 majority of the total members will override the presidential veto, will override the refusal of the president to sign. And once that is done, the bill automatically becomes a law. Okay? So if the president refuses to sign, what happens? Legislative override, none of the above. Judicial review, public petition. The answer is A, legislative override. That means override the veto, the override the refusal of the president. And the president is forced to implement that law. If not, he may go through what? Impeachment process. Okay? Now, Which document serves as the constitution of the United Nations? United Nations is an international organization. It's a universal organization. Okay, so if you know too well, let's see. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Geneva Convention, Treaty of the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, Charter of the United Nations. The Declaration of Human Rights is one of the charter of United Nations. Okay, but the remaining charter, the Constitution of United Nations, is the charter of United Nations. I don't want to make the mistake of calling UN or US. US come to the mouth very faster. So the answer is D, Charter of the United Nations. The charter means the agreement, the constitution among the Committee of Nations that make up the organization. Let's see the next one. Okay, pressure groups primarily aim to, I think I've discussed this earlier, so I will not need to waste time on this. I already explained this. I think number 12 or number 11 there, but you can see that these examiners, they do repeat their questions. You can see what happened now. I've discussed about pressure group, whether number 11 or 12 there about earlier. So let's see and go to the option. Promote social equality and justice, gain political power and control, influence public opinion through media campaigns, disrupt the functions of the government. Primarily, I told you earlier, what pressure group does is to influence government. Influence government, okay? They have nothing to do with power because they're no political party, okay? And they're not other fighting for everybody. They're not really fighting for equality of everybody. Why? They're always fighting for themselves, okay? And they don't attempt to disrupt the function of the government until when government refuses to grant their request. And that will be the last resort when they go on strike or do boycott or do demonstrations or what have you, okay? So the most correct answer for this particular question here is to influence public opinion through media campaigns. They go through many media platforms to make sure that their aims and objectives are being achieved. C. I hope you're enjoying this session. Please subscribe to this channel to get more of this. All right? In which system of government is executive and legislative fused? I'm just laughing because we have answered this question initially. If you follow me, you can see we have answered the question earlier, that executive and legislature are fused when I was talking about separation of power and alternate fusion of power. So which system of government is that? In that initial question we answered, the answer was parliamentary system of government, okay? But you and I know that the alternate name to parliamentary system of government is cabinet system. So the correct answer here is option A, cabinet system. Cabinet system is alternate name for what? Parliamentary system of government. Okay? Even as we move to the next one. Which of the following African leaders played a significant role in the formation of NEPAD? NEPAD means New Partnership for African Development. We cannot, in a hurry, forget Nelson Mandela of South Africa whenever we are discussing about NEPAD. Just like when we are talking about AU formation, we cannot forget in a hurry Muammar Gaddafi that pushed for this formation of AU. So, but for NEPAD, the correct answer here is Nelson Mandela of South Africa. And option B is the correct answer. Okay? Nigeria is a founding member of which regional organization? Now, when we talk about regional organization, we're talking about organizations that cover a subsection of a continent. Africa as a continent is divided into 5, okay? Using the 4 cardinal points, all right? If you use 4 cardinal points, then you can be able to understand what I'm saying. We have the north, the west, the east, the south, and of course the central. And Nigeria happens to belong to what? To the western area, the western region. In the western region here, we have a sub-regional international organization known as what? ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States. And that is the correct answer, option A. Okay? We have also discussed, I mean earlier, in one of the questions that we mentioned, OPEC, an open organization for oil producing companies. IMF is an agency of United Nations, International Monetary Fund. So the correct answer for that option is ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States. All right. The next question. The current constitution of Nigeria is based on the model of which country? Now, if you follow the history of Nigeria, when we got independence in 1960, all our system was tailored after British, our colonial master. Remember, the British colonized Nigeria for 99 years. 1861 to 1960. Okay, so when we got independent, we adopted their system, parliamentary system of government. Okay, until when there was military intervention in 1966, the first military coup, 1966, and when military came to power, they were there until 79 when they were about to leave. That was Second Republic. And when they were leaving, through Olusegun Obasanjo as the military head of state at that time, to give power to Alhaji Shehu Shagari, they gave us a new constitution, 1979 constitution. And that constitution changed our system of government from parliamentary system to presidential system. Okay? And that is why we ceased to have a prime minister in our history after that 79. Okay? So this presidential system of government was tailored after United States of America. Right? So we moved from British system to American system. Why? So the answer is this. B, United States of America. US. So our current system is based on US, where single person at the center is the head. We have the president. Okay. The arm of government responsible for budget approval and oversight is this. My dear, I used to tell my students that when you get to this point in government, particularly discussing the three organs of government, legislature, executive, and judiciary, particularly between legislature and executive, you must beware of this word, appoint and approve. Appoint and approve. Okay? All appointments in government are done by the executive. Appointment of ministers, appointment of ambassadors, high commissioners, ambassador of chairman of public corporations, all these are done by the executive. But the approval is done by the legislature. So when the president, who is head of executive, must have done with his appointment, is expected to submit the list to the legislature for what? For approval. Okay? Very well. So, but when it comes to budget is also being prepared by the executive. The executive prepare the budget and submit to who? To the legislature for approval. And until when the approval is sought, he is not liable to spend any money unless approval is sought or excuse is given. So, from this question, responsible for budget approval, like I said, all approval done by the legislature, and oversight. Oversight is a form of checks and balance. Okay? So the correct answer here is the legislative organ, which is the lawmaker, in Nigeria known as what? National Assembly. Okay? I hope you are enjoying this session. Please subscribe to this channel to get more. Right? Now, a key principle of the socialist system of government is, now I mentioned about socialists and capitalists earlier when I was talking about non-alignment movement, United States, USSR, and what have you. Okay? But when we say socialist system, we are talking about a system where government, or you say the public, control the affairs of the state, controls the available production. Okay, the production, distribution, and exchange of goods and services are done by the government. Okay, so the major principle here, when government is in charge, remember, when government set up business, the aim of such business, like public corporation, is not to make profit, but what? To provide essential services. Services to improve the life of the people. Okay, so let's see which option is close to this explanation I just gave. A, minimal government intervention in the economy, private ownership of the means of production. You know, private ownership is called what? Capitalist system. Okay? Power concentrated in the hands of a few elite individuals. And D, equality of opportunity and outcome for all citizens. So the most correct answer for the explanation I just gave to you is option D. Option D. Okay? In a communist system, who owns and controls the means of production? Communists, if you remember what they call Karl Marx mode of production, communism was the last stage. That is, when there is extreme participation in socialism, the end result will be communism, a classless society where everything is owned and controlled by the state, the government, and the government will give to each according to his need and take from each according to his ability. a classless of society. There's no rich and there's no poor. It seems to be like a mirage, as a state that may not be attainable, particularly with this level of civilization that we have now, globalization. Okay? So the correct answer, let's see the options. Corporations, the government, private individuals, non-profit organization. From what I just explained, the government. The government is the public, the state. The state owns and controls everything in a communist state. Okay, so let's see. The National Assembly is composed of how many chambers? I've said that earlier. If you are following this session, you'll notice I've mentioned this earlier. The National Assembly is the legislative house or legislature in Nigeria. And I said earlier that we have two houses, the upper house and lower house. Lower house, House of Rep, upper house, House of Senate. So the answer is A, two chambers or two houses. Okay? Which of the following was a significant trade commodity in the pre-colonial Benin? If you remember the Benin Kingdom, the current Edo State, the Benin Kingdom, they were known for artistic prowess, artists, so not gold, not rubber, not silver, everything. It has to do with art and culture. Very rich art and culture. Today, there are allegations of quarters that British people, they stole many of their art and culture, which are also in their own, over there in London, in their museums in London. Okay? Every answer is A. Okay? The next question, Dash was a major factor that contributed to the rise of Sokoto Caliphate. The Sokoto Caliphate. If you remember the story of the Northern African Traditional System, ATS, I talk about centralized system of the North. In the northern area, we were told from history, they had what they call Hausa Kingdom. There were 14 kingdoms in Hausa land until 1804, when a jihadist called Usman Danfodio, they were migrants with his brothers, and they were accepted in the north, and in the course of their religious practice, they thought that they know more. They're extremists, they're Islamic extremists. They know much more than the Hausa people, and by so doing, they went into war. Few people that came, they went into war and they conquered the Hausa kingdom. And instead of having Hausa 14 Hausa kingdom, they introduced what they call emirate system. And that's what we're operating to date, where emir is the head in the north. Okay? So they started this by what they call jihad holy war. Jihad holy war. In other words, they are fighting for God. And this jihad in some quarters, some people are saying again that this jihad is still ongoing, particularly with this Boko Haram, trying to take over states and territories. Jihad war. Agricultural revolution, slave trade, European colonization, Islamic jihad. The answer here is Islamic jihad. Okay? Which political party was known for its socialist ideology and populist policies in the 1980s? I can never forget this because I remember that man called Aminu Kano. Aminu Kano, for those of you that understand history of the northern Nigeria, Aminu Kano was part of the northern elders that formed the first political party in the north, known as what? MPC, Northern People's Congress. All right? This party was formed from their cultural group called Jamiya Mutanem Arewa. Okay? But along the line, Aminu Kano noticed that the elites in the north hijacked MPC. So he left them and formed another party for the poor, for the less privileged. And they call it what? NEPU. Northern Element Progressive Union. All this happened before independence around 1946 and 1955. From NEPU. Okay? Now, this Northern Element Progressive Union they call them Talakawas. That they call Talakawas, the plebeians in the north. So this man has so much heart for the less privileged, the poor people. Okay? So when you are talking about a socialist person, somebody who has care for majority of the people. So when we came to 1980s, particularly for 1983 election, where, what is his name? Even for 1979 and 1983 election. Okay, in 1979 we had 5 political parties, and by 83, one was added to make it 6. That was NAP, the party by Tunji Braithwaite, who is late now, okay? Now, these parties, we have UPN, we have NPN, we have GMPP, and we have PRP, Okay? So that PRP was the one, this APN was Awolowo's own, NPN was Shagari, GMPP was Nnamdi Azikiwe, and of course, PRP was who? Aminu Kano. So the most correct answer from this option is option A, People's Redemption Party. With this, we have come to the end of today's session. Please, if you have any question, you can drop it on this channel. And also, you're encouraged to visit this channel often so that you can get more and better of this. Thank you.